Welcome back. Welcome to Joe's Take. Today we'll be watching a clipped version of a video from Second Thought about Blackwater pardons, PMCs, or private military contractors, and U.S. imperialism, aka what our role is on the world stage. It's going to be kind of a heavy topic. Came back on January 1st and watched this video. He premiered it that day, and it was a little heavy for that day too, and it's a little heavy, but it's a good topic to talk about, and so we're just going to go ahead and watch if you want to watch the full version, go to this link. Going to include the link to his video and support him on Patreon if you agree. I've watched him for some time now and really enjoy his videos, but I just wanted to kind of make a Joe's Take about it and talk about it. Still figuring out the rules in terms of how it will be showing the video, so I wouldn't be surprised if it just gets taken out completely. If it does, I will take out this part, or take out the video part, and just include the video, so just go watch it here. Yeah, so I'll see you on the other side.
Think about what defines the United States. What comes to mind? Big cars, big flags, McDonald's, probably all the stereotypical stuff, but I'd be willing to bet that for most people outside the US, one of the first things that comes to mind is our incredibly massive and powerful military, and that's no surprise. With over 600 military bases in other countries and a near-constant armed occupation of various regions, it makes sense that the only experience many people have with the US is our military presence. We're going to talk about private military companies, the recent Blackwater pardons, and how these mercenary groups fit into the US imperialist framework. These companies, PMCs for short, are private companies providing armed combat or security services for financial gain. The operatives, known as contractors, who are employed by these companies are often hired as protection for notable figures, armed security for U.S. corporations in unreceptive regions, and for covert missions at the behest of the U.S. government. U.S. PMCs have operated in over 50 countries and on every continent except Antarctica. Back in the 90s, there used to be 50 military personnel for every one private contractor. Today, the ratio is 10 to 1. Let's consider the recent presidential pardon of 4 Blackwater contractors for crimes they committed during the U.S. occupation of Iraq. Blackwater, now known as Academy, was founded in 1997 by former Navy SEAL Eric Prince, who is, coincidentally, the brother of Trump's education secretary, Betsy DeVos. Blackwater started out as a shooting range and training facility for the armed services, police, and security personnel, but after the invasion of Iraq became an active and lucrative private military company. Just before noon on September 16, 2007, a team of Blackwater contractors operating under the call sign Raven 23 opened fire in a traffic circle in Baghdad. According to their official statement, their vehicles had taken fire and one of them had been disabled, at which point the Blackwater operatives started shooting at everyone around them. Eyewitness accounts and a U.S. court of law determined this to be a lie. Nick Slatton, the sniper who first opened fire, was sentenced to life in prison, while 3 other men, Dustin Hurd, Evan Liberty, and Paul Slough, received 30 years, later reduced to 12 to 15 years each. Then, on December 22, 2020, President Trump granted a full pardon to each of the 4 men, citing, quote, "a long history of service to the nation."
So, hope you enjoyed the Second Thought video. I know it's a very heavy kind of topic, and depending upon what your political views lie, you can either be very, very pissed off or, kind of disgusted, or somewhere in between probably. So I've written out a little bit of the blurb I want to talk about. Excuse my looking back and forth. So yeah, after watching the full video, which included a lot more opinion than fact, I wanted to make a response video talking about it. But more importantly, what we can all do to move forward together, so to prevent things like this from happening in the future to begin with. The whole private military contractors, the Trump's pardons, the reason specifically why he did those, or depending upon your view, why you think he did those. So starting off, he asked us to think about what defines the United States. And unfortunately, that brings up a widely different view depending upon what your perspective and background is. Whether or not you're a woman, someone of ethnic descent, a poor person in Appalachia, someone struggling in an inner city ghetto, or if you're someone suburbia or an upscale city, or, it all depends. It's all factors in your perception of the United States, in other countries, what TV, media, news you watch, what books you read, people you talk to, etc., etc., etc. They're all influences in what you believe about this country, about the world, about who you are, all of that. So in the video, he asserts that for people outside the United States, it's our massive and powerful and scary military, with 600 bases across the world and millions of people involved in the military. It's a certain perspective. You have to put yourself outside someone in the United States, and that's what this channel is partly going to be about, having that communication with people outside the United States, because it is, unfortunately, a lot of people view that. For people in this country, in the United States, it's a positive thing to have a powerful and huge military, because it's a protective thing. Because we are animals all battling each other with knives and spears, and that's what we've been doing for forever. And we're finally getting to the point where maybe we don't have to do that anymore. But next he began talking about PMCs, or private military contractors, which is relating to the recent Blackwater pardons and how it fits on the overall American imperialism. These private companies employ contractors and are playing a larger role in the military's presence around the world. It's only increased. He talks about the ratio, how it's went from 50 to 1 to 10 to 1, and some actually believe it's 1 to 1. So for every military personnel, like service, like sworn in, there is a private military company operative that would be his equal. So yeah, he specifically talks about Blackwater, introduced a little bit of the backstory behind it, and he talks about the main event, which everyone knows Blackwater for, which was a massacre in Baghdad, where basically 17 people were murdered, 20 more were wounded, 2 of them were kids. It was a very, very bad thing. It was on the news media for a long time. There was a trial about it in 2014. They were convicted, or 2014, 4 of them were convicted. Nick Slatton, life in prison. Dustin Hard, Evan Liberty, and Paul Slarth, all reduced to 12 to 15 years each. So these were each with their own story, military experience, private military experience, and then on December 22nd, Trump pardoned them. He was 4 out of the 15 pardons at that time. I think there's a couple others that he did, but obviously it was met with a difference of opinion about whether or not those pardons were good, based on what your perspective is. So to quickly summarize, people outside the U.S. have a different perspective of our military presence. That's just a fact. And the reality is it's not always positive, but of course, the individual soldiers or contractors are not directly responsible for that overall, just like how police officers here are, given the root of all cause, or, all the burden is on them, but it's not really them. It's the politicians making political laws, putting it on them to enforce. Just like how the military is the enforcement of the federal government, of the national government. And that's a lot to that. But the reality is that Trump, while not always perfect, did stand up and say to all military contracts and personnel, like, hey, we got you. That's not always the best thing, because certain things that happen and there's details involved. But the United States does back you up. That is a thing. And that's one of the reasons why we're one of the best countries and have been the best and need to be the best moving forward. But on the other side of that, in that part of the world, to the people that were affected by that, whether or not it's the 17 people murdered, the 2 kids, the other people wounded, just the effect that it had on the community, like, those are the murderers that just got released. So there's 2 sides of the coin. So yeah, it's a horrible thing, and it should never happen again. So let's figure out how to move forward, instead of just having a whole bunch of vitriol and negative opinions and everything. Like, it's happened at this point. There's nothing that we're going to be able to do to go back and change it. Biden's not going to go and unpardon these guys, so there's only things that we can do moving forward into the future to figure out. And that's somehow our conversation is going to lead to that, whether or not it's just influencing you or people around you, whatever it is. So let's focus on how we want the world to be and how we want the world to see the United States. And sometimes more importantly, how do we see ourselves? Are we a country that is purely focused on economic gains? Like, is that it? To the point where we have to let our whole military-industrial complex, that whole big old keyword, a system that's built around the concept of eternal war, is that what our country is? Is that what we want people to view? Is that what we want to view of ourselves? Military service is a great thing and should be something that is patriotic and idealized, and everyone who does it is a hero. But at the start of World War I, we were the exact opposite of that as a country. We didn't want to be a part of it. We didn't want to be a part of World War II either. And we kept ourselves because we had our own issues going on. And we still have issues going on from the issues created from the start of our country and our founding. But then World War I started. We started playing a central part, and we helped stop the war. Then certain aspects about the Treaty of Versailles led to the start of World War II, and we were an even larger role. Even though it took years to enter in the war, we played a pivotal part of producing parts for the war. Unfortunately, it happened on both sides, which is a part of history that no one really talks about, in terms of like the corporations and all that kind of stuff that helped on both sides of the war. But ultimately, we helped end it, and we helped end it with our military might, and we kept it. So it makes sense. Like, here we are just starting out. We have our own wars, and then a massive world war starts, and we become so industrialized and manufacturing focused that we keep doing it. It makes us money, it provides for our citizens. Of course, we should do it right. And to be honest, I'm glad we did. Without economic advancement, industrialization, we wouldn't be at the forefront of the world today. We wouldn't be the country that we are today. But we do need to check ourselves as a country and change the rules of the game a bit. We should not be the one using private military contractors in the way that we are. We should not be controlling certain regions just for economic resources or political maneuvering. But we should be the shining light on the hill again. Instead of retreating away from the world stage because of the mistakes of the past, let's continue to be a large presence in the world, because flat out, here in America, 99% of the time, we do have it better. There are definitely issues we need to correct, like I've said, but like for the vast majority of people in the United States, we do not have to worry about the problems that third world countries do. We've fixed those because of gas, because of modernization, industrialization, economic, greed and self-interest. We've become that. We are the United States. We don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. But of course, there are still areas that we do have to worry about, and people suffer from the same issues in the third world countries here in certain parts of the country that just aren't paid attention to. Whether or not it's high-profile ones like Flint, Michigan, or Appalachia, or certain parts in the Southwest, like. Yeah, so our country, going back to this amazing quality of life and everything, our country was founded on the principle of religious freedom. Freedom to practice it, freedom to do what you want, how you feel, and speak about how you feel, and freedom from it. We need to have a secular country, flat out. We need to have a secular country and government which has values based on secularism, which is the principle of separation of church and state. So that's kind of a big change, but it's only in recent times, in the 60s and 70s, when we put "In God We Trust," or we started the national anthem and changed it to make God under liberty. It's a recent change. It doesn't always have to be like that. So in doing this, and we need a national conversation needs to be had to define what our value system should be. And that's a hard thing to do. How do we have that? Is that a democratic vote, just flat out? Is that referendums? Is that just based on voting the congressional representatives, the senators, and having that move and spread like any other political ideology? But either way, we need to have someone stand up and inspire the country and inspire the rest of the world, to have a secular government. Whether or not that's me or someone else, well, history will tell, our future will tell. But we need to have a secular government, and from that, secular values and policies that have no tie to religious institutions or politically biased opinion-based systems which only act to divide and not unify. Saying it now, putting on record for all the world to see, that's my opinion. That's the improve with Joe kind of mentality. Religion is not bad, spirituality is not bad, but in terms of government institutions and how society should be run, flat out should not be a part of it. It should be a different system and not related to that. And that's another conversation. That's a lot of conversations. So over time, this is more about what I'll be talking about, and I'm really enthralled with the idea of having this conversation on a larger scale with the world, and not just America, because it is a view that I will be not just here in the United States, of a worldly kind of person, but that's the goal, that's the hope, and to travel a lot with a girlfriend, soon to be more, and see the world, experience the world, and understand it, and talk with people and understand them. Still getting to that point, but to continue on, to summarize, while the second thought video does provide great information about Trump's pardons, private military contractors, and American imperialism, I think it stops short at just describing the problem. Instead of discussing about what we can do moving forward to fix it. That's really ultimately what these conversations need to move into. Instead of just the divisiveness of all the politics that we've had for such a long time, we need to figure out, okay, these are the issues, these are your issues, how do we move forward and collectively try to eliminate both issues from both sides? We can pick and choose one from here, back and forth, until collectively we're all getting better and improving. Because this issue of who is right and who's wrong is never going to go away unless we start talking about how it should go away. That's what I'm saying. If there is going to be a continual battle of who is right versus wrong moving forward in the future, then the United States should be the one to decide, because of a flat-out better quality of life. While we do impose certain bad things on people, we have, taken certain ethnic minorities and put them certain areas during the war, just like China is doing the exact same thing with certain ethnic minorities. We're not perfect, but yeah. So there are definitely still things we need to fix, products of our creation, and why we're here where we are, like I've said. But with countries on the rise like China who are using similar political and military strategies and certain religious exemptions and policies and all that sort of type stuff, neither one is perfect, and we both need to be, and we all need to be moving forward. Because otherwise there's going to be a conflict with China and a war, and we're all just going to get roped into it like we got roped into the previous wars, and I don't want that to happen. I don't think anyone in China wants that to happen. I don't think you want that to happen. And your kids don't want that to happen. So let's have the conversation. Let's talk about it. If we can talk and communicate with others to improve our lives and their lives, together cooperate in some way, crazy idea, while still accepting each other's differences, and standing up for those who can't stand up for themselves, because that's a huge aspect for it as well. Then maybe we have that chance to all come together and reduce the overall shit in the world. Because that's generally my goal. I mean, it's kind of simple, but reduce the shit, get more of the good stuff for everyone. Because we can, and because robots, which is another big topic that no one is talking about. Like the fact that we're going to lose 30 to 40 or 50 million jobs in the next 20, 30 years because of robotic automation. Ha! Yeah, big topic. And ultimately, we all need to realize that all we need is an alien invasion to come and attack us, because then everyone's going to be like, hey, we're all equal, we're all humans, we all need to work together. And the fact of that is horrible. Like, we shouldn't need an alien invasion, a third party to unite us, to bring us together. We've united against a certain country before and against certain policies and all that sort of type stuff. Let's unite for the sake of uniting, for the potential improvement down the road, for the space advancement, for the cooperation and the sharing of ideas, like all that good stuff. So thank you for following along on this rambling discussion about the United States and our role in it. I hope it inspires you to think about what you want your role to be in your life, in your community, in your world, and what role you think the United States should have. So yeah, look forward to talking more about this in the future, and thank you for improving the job. Have a great one. See you.